David Edward and Kay Hall discuss Kay's new book, Becoming Fly with Kay.
Kay, how are you?
Fantastic, David. How are you?
I'm doing really good. As I mentioned, I was hoping you'd be on your plane.
I know, I was hoping so too, but I can never quite guarantee the service, and I didn't want to miss out on talking to you, so I came home.
Well, I appreciate that. No, that's awesome. So, Kay, we're here talking. You're obviously people can find your content in a lot of different places, and more people know you than they know me. But we're here talking because on top of all the other things you've done and accomplished, you also about a month ago published your first book.
I did, yes. Pretty crazy experience.
And it's called Becoming Fly with Kay,
Yes,
Plane to Social Media Fame. There's a
there
copy
it
of
is.
it. All right.
Exactly.
That's good. So what is, well, first off, what is the book? What is this book about?
It really is. So it's an autobiography, obviously. It's more just about my journey. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't kind of prevent anybody from wanting to pick up the book. There's some aviation related content because I am Fly with Kay. There is some stories of when I was a broke 20-year-old in my 20s, couldn't figure out how I was going to pay rent and my car insurance every single month. And it was just really difficult. So it was finding my passion, which turned out to be flying, of course. A few funny stories about flying, the time that I broke my sunglasses right before I was supposed to solo. And my instructor told me because of that, I was not allowed to solo. I couldn't manage myself properly. And I tried to give as much detail as possible so people really feel like they're kind of sitting next to me during these experiences. And it also talks about how I ended up where I am today as far as social media is concerned.
Well, that's what I'm very tempted because that's your story. I'm tempted to start asking you those kind of questions, but you've told that story, and in the book you tell that story. So I don't want to give the book away. I want to focus on, you're pretty busy and you put out a lot of videos and a lot of content. So what was going on? And I think you're doing pretty good. So what was going on in your life? You're like, you know what? I think I got one more mountain I want to climb. And I'm going to write a book. What prompted you to take that on?
I always love a challenge, but honestly, it's really just about my followers and my fans. I was constantly being asked the same questions over and over. At 25 years old, how is it that I can fly an airplane? How is it that I've built up 2 million followers on social media on just one platform alone? And rather than just continuing to answer those questions in the comment section of my videos and on my live broadcast, I decided I had the stories, I had the time. So every time when I was traveling, I'd sit in my hotel room, bring out my laptop and write until I couldn't write anymore. And I actually was able to write the book pretty quickly. It was the editing process that took forever.
well, let's dive into that. So one of my questions is, how do you structure it? And I get what you're doing, which is since a lot of what you do is moving from point A to point B, pretty soon you're at point B and it's 3 a.m, you're not gonna get the plane. So you're in a hotel room or whatever, you got to do something. So I take it you just decided you had enough downtime in between the trips and all that to dedicate to writing.
Absolutely. I think probably the biggest thing is when I was being asked those questions and stuff after my lives, or when I was going through the comment sections, I'd put little notes in my phone and it would already give me so many ideas of what I could write about. So when I finally took the time to take out the laptop, the words just kind of started coming to me, which was awesome. There was a few times where I was trying to figure out how in depth I wanted to write a chapter, and I'd rewrite that about 3 or 4 times. And that was an extensive process. But yeah, it was one of those things where the more I got asked those questions, the more stories I came up with. And I've even got enough content for a second book already, which is cool. So
well, yeah, and you're being a little modest because this book this is not just you, this is not just your notes, right, from your phone or something. You've crafted a narrative that is both informative, which is how you did what you've done, but you also tell stories that make sense and that move that narrative forward. That's not a casual thing. Unless you're just good at it. But how did you work through that piece?
I do like to chalk up the success of the way that I wrote the book as how I communicate with my followers and with my fans. On those lives, in those videos, I got very, very good very early on at giving enough detail where people felt like they were a part of it, but not so much detail that they get bored with that story. And so then it was kind of a process of, okay, well, which stories do I really want to include? I talk about, when I was a flight instructor, I was flying with a student and she was practicing takeoff and landings. And she was doing pretty well, but she seemed a little off kilter. And long story short, we get on the runway, we're taking off, and she's going a little slow. She's pitching too far back. So the nose is really far up in the air and our airspeed's dropping. So as an instructor, I'm like, okay, let's just push that control yoke forward. That's the little part that looks like a steering wheel. And that's going to bring that nose down, and that'll increase our airspeed. And she goes into a full-on panic. So she goes power idle. So we've got no engine power. She's still pitched back, and then she screams, "Your airplane!" And as the instructor, it's my responsibility to say, "My airplane," and take the controls and prevent a stall, which is what I did. And I do talk a lot about that in the book because I don't want to, shame her. I think it's a learning experience that students can see and teachers can see and instructors can see in all kind of forms of life, regardless of what it is that you're doing, which I thought was really cool to share.
Well, that's very cool to share. And you're right. You started doing this in 2018, if I read correctly. Is that about right?
For social media?
Social media?
I started about 2 years ago. So 2020.
Oh, geez.
I started my aviation journey in 2018.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say is that, a lot has changed around what we want to commit to video because it's out there forever. Even the past 2 years, it's changed. So telling stories like that, you craft them very well. And what's nice about them is they're interesting stories, but they also make a point, right? That you can take and kind of move forward. Yeah. So how long did it take you from that first time you opened the laptop, like, I'm writing the book today, I'm writing the book. How long from then until you had, a draft that you sent to the editor, let's say?
So I actually, because I was self-published and stuff, I actually found an editor on Fiverr, which we'll get into later on. Unfortunately, that didn't work out so well for me. But the actual writing process itself was about 3 to 4 months. However, until I was actually ready to hit that publish button on Amazon, it was about 8 months, just because the editing process took so long. I took some chapters out. I added some more detail, kind of changed things around. Because like you said, even with video content, it's there forever. Same if it's in written form. So I wanted to make sure I was 100% happy. And that's one of the hardest parts is I had to decide, okay, this is good enough. Stop trying to change it every single day, Well,
yeah, that's the downside of this, right? Which is you can change anything forever and you can move anything around forever. At least with video, you got what you recorded, you got to make it work, right? But with this, you can. So the book, so what does someone get from reading the book? Let's get that.
I think that a lot of my followers have specifically mentioned, and even some people who are not my followers, they're actually what I like to call the negative Nancys of the internet. They have actually.
Wait, Kay, hold on. I've been on this thing for like a long time. Negative Nancys.
Yes. What? I clocked that term on my TikTok probably a little over 6 months ago. And now anytime there is an internet troll or somebody who wants to come around and be negative, everybody who follows me calls them negative Nancy. So it is an official statement from FlyWithKay. And that is nothing against the Nancys out there. They are all wonderful.
They're fine. Yeah. Look, I've got negative. I got people that every time I publish a book, they just give it 1 star, no review. But
exactly.
It's just, I don't know what they must wait. They're doing something in between, but
who knows?
It's a funny place to focus. Yeah. But anyway, so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's just
no, you're totally fine.
Yeah.
No, that's perfect. No, I would say the biggest thing that people will get from me is hopefully the inspiration and the motivation to go after something that they really truly care about, regardless if there are people of your own age or older than you telling you can't. Aviation is very male dominated, as I'm sure you've probably recognized. A lot of people have noticed that, and being able to kind of be a part of that change has been really inspiring. And also just being able to share the overall journey. I'm not a rich kid. I'm not a spoiled brat who grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth. My family worked hard. I worked hard growing up. And when I graduated high school, I couldn't decide what I wanted to do for a living. I wanted to be passionate about something. I didn't want to go drop $200,000 on a 4-year degree for something I wasn't going to care about. And so I decided to go and work a full-time job as a server, barely make ends meet until it was when I found that passion. And I think that book, Becoming FlyWithKay, really does kind of represent my whole journey of being broke and somehow being able to turn in all of those negatives into a positive to inspire people from around the world.
That's fantastic. Well, let's talk about the editor that you hired, because I'm glad you said, I self-publish, we mentioned it, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I think it's good. It just means you're able to get book content out to people that like it, and it's not a corporate product, which I think is fantastic.
Me too.
But like, I know when I started, I went on, not Fiverr, I did Upwork, and I went through two people that said they were editors, and they really one person basically just used like the tools that I have available, and it took me to the third person, but now I found her, and she's done 42 of my books. So I
Oh,
mean,
that's wonderful.
once you find someone, but it's hard. I mean, a third of the, I tried three people, only one of them fit, so 30%. You know what I mean? So what did you go through?
Absolutely. So I did use Fiverr, and I think I spent, I want to say it was $995. And basically she was going to go through the whole book. She was going to edit it. She responded after she had done it. It took her about a week, I want to say. And when she responded, she's like, it's a great book. I think it's going to do awesome. And I'm going through her quote unquote edits. And just like you said, she literally just used a program. So she was fixing things that didn't need to be fixed, past tense versus present tense and things were all messed up. So it ended up actually causing double the work for me. So much, in fact, that I sent a copy to my uncle. I sent one to my grandma. I had my mom and dad read it. And we were literally going through and we were editing and reviewing this like 5 times before we were finally like, okay, this is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
And so that was a learning experience for me. I didn't really have a way to do a trial and error kind of situation until it was actually an error. And I had to figure out how to do it myself because I didn't have another grand to put into another editor who might make a mistake.
That's a lot. I mean, the industry rate is $65 for every 1,000 words.
Oh, okay.
So if your book is 50,000 words, that's how much that is. 300.
I was going to say, I'll let you do the math on that
one. But yeah. So but I did the same thing on book covers. I mean, you have a brilliant looking book cover. I initially used to pay people $500 for a book cover, which is insane. It's too expensive. Now I just do it myself. So
nice.
Now self-editing is hard, but at least you understood the importance of it, I think, right?
Of course.
So,
absolutely. I didn't hire the editor so that I wouldn't have to go through and edit my own book. I hired the editor for those things that as just a regular reader would notice as, other editors and other authors and anybody else that picked up the book would. That's the kind of things that I would miss because I'm not a writer. I have a book, but I'm not a writer, at least not yet. Maybe someday.
You're a writer. I've read it. You're a writer, but you can't. It's impossible to edit your own stuff. I've proven this. I mean, because your brain tricks you. Now, if you let it sit for 6 months and come back to it, you can. But when you just wrote it, if it's not exactly right, your brain kind of fills it in for you. It's like So
you'll miss the word the, or you'll spell she instead of he or something. But the way that you wrote it, you remember when you were typing it out of what it's supposed to say. So that's the way you'll read it.
Yeah.
So that was a huge pain.
For me, it's from and form. I get that wrong just over and over and over. So, but so
totally
now
get it.
Your book is also, it has a very attractive layout too. It's not just kind of like a word processor dump. I mean, a lot went into that layout. Who did that?
So I did find somebody on Fiverr who actually formatted the entire book for me. I was able to kind of customize how I wanted the chapters to look. I wanted there to be a little bit of space. I wanted it to not be one of those stories or those novels or those books that a younger kid will pick up and be intimidated by. I wanted it to be very easily read. So it's not one of those books that'll take you a month to get through. I mean, if you really want to sit down and read it in 5 hours, you probably can, which I think is really cool because I feel like it's a lot more available to all ages, which I like.
That's a plane trip from here to Las Vegas, where I am to Las Vegas, by the way. So perfect. If you're flying to Las Vegas, get the book.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be awesome.
All right. So it's been out for about a month, just a few days over a month. It's doing really good for someone's first book. Is there anything that has surprised you? I mean, I know you've got so many channels where you can interact with people, but this is yet another one. Is there anything that surprised you about having being a published author and having a book out there now?
I think the biggest thing that has surprised me is the amount of people, like you were mentioning earlier, that will go out of their way to leave me a negative review that haven't read the book, didn't open the book, and didn't buy the book. I had a few of those come through when I was first publishing it. I think I was on day 3 of it actually being out. And I logged into my Amazon, super excited to read what people were writing and stuff. Because, you get the message, oh, you've got a new review, right?
Yeah.
And I'd go and I'd just be devastated. And it'd be like, oh, you couldn't pay me enough money to open up this book. They didn't even buy the book.
I saw that. I saw one. It said, I'm not going to open it. It's like, well, if you're not going to open it, why do you take 20 minutes to write this friggin'? Yeah, no, I know. I get those too. I get those. And it's bizarre.
I think that was the biggest thing that surprised me because, you
Yeah.
know, I mentioned there's people who will leave comments and stuff on my videos or join my lives, and they'll say some pretty horrendous things, which I do also mention in the book. And it surprised me that there was people who would go out of their way to leave me a false review when they hadn't even read it. You know, that was pretty crazy.
Well, and especially it's not like you're writing about dragons or, I mean, you know, I mean, it's a fairly uplifting success story that, like I have something to learn from it. I don't, you know, I'm just a little tiny media guy. I'm not trying to be where you are, but you know, all of it's all relevant and it's really well done. So yeah, so why that kind of energy? That's beyond me. But the cool thing I will tell you is that these books, they have legs much longer than you realize. So you're going to have this book in your pocket for a long time. Is a very, you know, after 5 years, it's still a relatively new book.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that's
Which
good.
I think is really cool because, you know, I do plan to continue my social media, not only just on TikTok and Instagram, but I'm actually going to start looking into making some longer videos for YouTube. And as my platforms all grow, hopefully so will my book, which I think a lot of people who will join maybe over the course of the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, however long I ride this gravy train for, they'll be able to see that I started out just like a lot of people do, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, you can call your next book "Landing with Kay." How's that?
I think it's actually going to be Being Fly with Kay.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough.
I do like the landing one. I might have to make a little pun off of that one.
That can be your that can be your very last book, and then put it on your tombstone or something. Landing with Kay.
I am totally down. That sounds awesome.
All right. Well, Kay, you know, you've done a lot, and the book does give advice. So I don't want to get into that, but specifically talking as someone who had a lot going on in their life and found the time to write a book, and not just start a book. And I always point this out: starting a book is hard, but finishing a book is nearly impossible. Yes. So what advice might you have for someone who like you has a good story to tell, and they think that a book is the right format, but they're a little intimidated by the process, or they don't know how to go about it? What advice might you have?
The first piece of advice that I would always give anybody, and this goes across anything you're working towards, not even if you're just going to write a book, is just start. Even if you type out, you know, this book is going to be the worst thing to ever hit the bookshelves in Barnes and Noble, get something on that piece of paper, right? And maybe make yourself laugh, maybe make yourself cry, get into that mindset of what you want to write, get into that emotion, and then just start. But don't just start and then decide, oh, I'll write more in a couple of weeks. Every single day, sit at that computer, even if you don't write anything, because you never know when that inspiration is going to strike. There could be something that happened during the day that you don't even realize you're inspired by. And then you sit down and all of a sudden you've got 50 pages of your book written down. I definitely recommend just start and keep going. Even if it takes you 10 years to write a book, just keep going.
I think that's really good advice. And I always tell people, if you're going to start it, pick a story that you want to know the ending of. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So you have a motivation to finish. And your story, of course, isn't done yet, but I guess that there was a point in time where the book did have to stop. So
yes, that's why I was trying to figure out, you know, I actually have a few chapters and stuff that I took out of the first book to save for the second book. Cause I was like, okay, I feel like this is a good place to stop. And like you said, you haven't finished the book yet. Hopefully you will soon. And then you'll kind of see what I mean by this is a good place to stop. But I've got a lot of things I'm working on right now, and I'm really excited to be able to share those, hopefully in another book sometime in the near future.
Well, this is fantastic. It's been great you taking time out of your busy flight schedule to meet with us. And I'm sure many people are going to be very interested and inspired by your story. Because there's lots of people that have very good books in them, and we just got to get them out from up here out there, you know.
I completely agree. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Kay, look, when you get your second book out, let me know and we'll chat again.
Definitely, David. Thank you so much for your time. This was a blast. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kay. Nice meeting you. Bye.
Nice meeting you. Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.